Hello.
Hello there.
Yeah.
How y'all
We
doing tonight?
live.
How you doing, Butch?
Doing pretty good, Mr. Scott. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Pretty
Not too
good.
badly?
It's cooled off a bit.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. You can wear dark colors. I noticed you got a dark shirt on too.
Yeah, sure do.
Because we didn't do that 2 weeks ago.
No, I want to fry out there.
Yeah. So we got some anticipation for this one. I think we're gonna jump right into it, folks. I want Carol Ann, the people, and I probably should say this. I'll repeat this here in a little bit, but I want to encourage anyone who's got a statement or a question to type it in, and what we're going to do is we're going to address them all at the end.
There you go.
We're going to do this as a two-parter because there's a lot of stuff to cover. We're going to start off talking about the Guard Dog Training School weekend seminar, and then that's going to be the most of it. If you got questions, call them in, but we're going to be talking about the curriculum we're actually going to do at the school more than the training methods, okay? And then the last part, we're going to go into that trivia question that seems to have everybody
Buffaloed.
Yeah, going to their Googles.
Everybody just,
What's a buffalo? Yep. And remember, listen to Scott closely, because we got everybody buffaloed. Let's explain that part here near the end. What do you think, Scott?
I think you're right.
So, what do you think about our dog training seminar? You got any comments you'd like to start out with?
Well, we have a curriculum coming out here in the next few weeks, and all the technical techniques we're going to do, starting dogs, getting the defense versus the prey drive, and all this. People are talking about dogs pushing in and going to defense. Well, there's a whole different scenario we're going to talk about later on, but we'll explain exactly how it works.
Yeah.
The prey drive to defensive drive, and how to get your dog in a defensive drive. You're going to use a very prey-driven dog to make him bite harder.
Right, and this is what we don't do in this country. A few people, if you go around the Chicago area, Gypsy and Stratton and his bunch, they're big on defense.
Yep.
And there's a reason for it if you've got a real protection dog. If you've got a dog in a serious situation, prey drive gives you a full mouth bite. Everybody's looking for the full mouth sport bite, but defense properly done is where dogs bite hard, because when their defense drive kicks in, it's about saving their life. So you take that kind of serious. So to get a true man stopper, you need to get the best of both drives. So it's what, when the Germans first came here with Schutzen, Mr. Kohler never heard of prey and defense, had no idea. And I consider him kind of the father of American guard dog training. He didn't know the terms. He was using the same ideas, but he couldn't label and he couldn't differentiate. He just did what worked. So what the Germans did, because they're more scientific, they had labeled everything, and they'd understood these psychological terms of drives and instincts. And they had a roadmap as to how you use them. And if you use them correctly, I was told by some folks one time at a seminar that I could probably get a billy goat to bite. And if you know how to use prey and defense properly, you can. But it takes defense as well as the prey drive, and that's what you have to have with the guard dog. So we're going to start off with how to recognize each one, and then how to trigger each one, and then how to put the two together.
There's a lot of things that just basically there's a line in the sand, right? You got your prey drive people, and you got your defensive drive people.
Okay.
And they're both die hard. They won't come. That's the style, because they're very knowledgeable this, they're knowledgeable about this, but they don't believe both sides work.
Right.
The trick is to have a balance between the both, like you just said.
Yep.
I'm just saying that,
Yeah, get the best of both worlds.
You need both worlds.
Yeah.
Every situation's different.
Right. You can get a, because prey drive gives you that full mouth bite, I mean, look at this right here. With Prey Drive, they're gonna bite like that. All the stuff you see, the Malinois sucking the suits, and the guys picking them up and body slamming them on the YouTubes. They've all got their mouth all the way back to their jaws, but you know what? They ain't biting that hard.
You're just hanging on.
They're just hanging on. They're just sucking on a pacifier more than anything else. But it's that full mouth bite, and the reason you need a full mouth bite is real simple. Think about this: if you were a pull-up, chin-up contest, chinning contest, would you go? How many could you do if you just held with your fingertips? 1, 2. But if you wrap your whole hands around it, you got control of that bar, and you can pull your whole body weight. Same thing applies to a dog's bite. That's why you don't want a shallow bite. It's like holding underbar like this. You want that full mouth bite to give them complete power and control over the potential threat. Now, the one thing about that full mouth bite is it ain't the dog's heart into it, because Prey Drive is for chasing prey. You got to grab a rabbit and hold it. Now, don't get me wrong. Any dog nailing any human is going to make you want to cry, but I'm talking about when a dog's working by himself, and there may be more need for that than you realize for that type of training, because most people who get a protection dog don't really have to worry about having the dog or being attacked personally. If, in my experience in the 20 years I did this, most of the times the dogs they bought were used was while the owner was gone and somebody broke into the house. Same situation as a commercial guard dog. There's nobody there to back up the dog. He has to do it on his own.
Yeah.
So when you want a dog by himself to handle a 160, 80 pound man who may be high on something, you want to bite, you want to know that when he bites, it ain't just full, because just full will make somebody who's hopped up enough jerk free and leave or reach over and kill your dog.
There's 2 of them.
That dog's got to bite hard enough so that when that guy gets out of there, he knows that his grandkids are going to have a dog bite scar from that bite. Period. That's how hard you want to bite. Try to get my mic right here.
So that's Prey Drive, right?
So it's prey for full, defense for hard.
So basically, a dog, most protection dogs, personal protection dogs, are a little bit deterrent. They're trained, they know what to do, but there's not many times you pull that trigger with that dog, or send that dog or anything else.
Right.
But if he's at home alone, basically the dog needs to protect himself too.
Thank you.
So basically, you have to have a balance of both.
Yep.
And dog will know. You train him to what to look for.
Right.
Defensive or
prey.
Prey, right? When someone comes in and dog is trained, recognizes the motions. They look at motions. Dog, they're very, they'll recognize what drive to be in.
Right.
Or you can go from one to the other.
Right.
Get a bite, defense drive. Defensive work. To protect himself also.
And
they're martial art. They're MMA players, man.
MMA, yeah. And here's the thing. This is the biggest mystery in the world. The first 20 years after Schützen first came to this country, the Germans would tell us prey and defense have to be balanced to make it a proper dog. In Schützen, they did a courage test. They don't do it. They don't do much of Schützen like they did when they first came here. Now they got padded sticks and they swing it over the dog's head and they never strike the dog. When Schützen first came over here, they had what they called a schlag stick, and it was a twisted willow about yay long, and it was a pretty wicked little stick.
A whelper.
Yeah, it would leave welts. And in the courage test, the two would clash and the dog would bite, and then the decoy would drive the dog and hit him. 3 stick hits. And like Scott said, some of them decoys put welts on your dog. Then we started calling it a courage test, but the whole purpose of that test got lost. The original reason that was done in the way it was done was because they wanted to take the dog from prey drive. I'm going after the sleeve and the one I want. Arr! And they wanted to kick him into defense to see if the dog was going to choose flight or fight. So then it was like, boom, he hits that helper, and then the helper comes back like a banshee and whack, whack, whack. And what's the dog going to do? Bite harder or cut out? You have to balance. They both have benefits. And balancing them is the most confusing thing in the world. I walked around thinking I knew what drives were and what balancing was for about 12, 14 years, and then I really learned. So we're going to go deeply into drives. I don't want to stay on this too long.
Yeah.
We're going to start off with how to recognize the drive, how to know when you're switching the drives, and why you want to use both drives, defense as well as play drive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll probably start off with a little bit of classroom work.
Yep.
On that, yeah. Then we're going to go into some equipment stuff. And that's where, so when I started fooling with teaching bite dogs, guard dogs, this is all I knew to use. And I had no idea where to buy a sleeve, and I don't think suits were even invented in this country at that time.
You tape that to your arm or something?
No. Yeah. Now, actually, what we would do, you go to the Goodwill store and you buy at that time an old Levi jacket,
Oversized?
way oversized, and you take some of these, you cut it up, and you just wrap them around your arms and put your jacket on. And it wasn't fun. It was not fun at all. So especially since we didn't do prey drive, we did defense.
Yeah, bad.
So when they did bit, it was serious bit. It had nothing to do with you're a rabbit and I'm just going to hold you. But anyway, that's a long time ago. So this is the most useful tool in the guard dog industry. All the successful guard dog men that I knew in the larger, more successful companies, this was what we had. You can use this on a site without alerting the dog to equipment, but still giving him a bite. You can control the dog's movements. So you can take him when he actually bites, and if he's all prey drive, he just ran you down, you can use one hand, and you can use this other hand to do things to kick his defense drive up. Mm-hmm. You can start off a puppy with this, and it's not intimidating like biting a man, which dogs have a natural inhibition against doing. Mm-hmm. So we're going to cover how to properly use these sacks as well.
It's very efficient in civil work too.
Well, yeah, that's the
to
big.
get dogs from made to sleeve or equipment-oriented dogs.
Right.
It takes it right out of their head.
Right.
They don't know when it's coming.
Right.
They don't see it coming.
And I'm glad you said it that way. So the biggest complaint people started having when Schutzhund got popular, that's where the sleeve happy, juke junkie stuff started coming along. Mm-hmm. Dogs just chasing a sleeve. Excuse me. And in many cases, that's true to this day. And what people don't realize, well, I'm just wearing a suit. My dog's real. No. Your dog knows what a suit looks like. So the trick is how you do the actual training. And the way you present your bites for a guard dog versus a sport dog are 180 degrees apart. So we're going to probably start off we're going to go into the drives to try and help everybody understand how useful they are and how to use defense as well as prey drive. Then we're going to switch over and we're going to actually get out here. We will have hopefully multitudes of dogs for people to work with. We'll have some beginner dogs. We'll have some Malinois. We'll have some Mastiffs. We may have one or two Basset Hounds. I'm not real sure. But we will.
Maybe some Frenchies too.
And some French. We'll have some French Bulldogs. And the purpose is to let whoever's here learn about the different types of dogs and how effective they can be training using both drives to get the dogs doing it. And that's where we're going to really push with everyone.
Now, we say guard dogs. Now, just don't the misconception we're talking about solo hunters in a car lot. Because guard dogs or personal protection dogs are considered guard dogs also.
Right.
You know, we specialize in personal protection dogs. But Butch's knowledge of guard dogs also interacts and works together with the personal protection dogs together. So just keep that in mind. It's not all about just the dog by himself. It's actually the dog, the handler, and the agitator together, training the dog the right way
Right.
to make the dog successful and the handler successful also.
Right. And you know, I've had a lot of people talk about, and you'll hear said a lot, well, a dog who does Schutzhund can't do French ring. You know, whatever. A dog who does Mondio can't do Schutzhund. And I agree, because these are pattern, routine, trained formats for scores and points. The dogs are learning the pattern that they should work in more than anything else. So now, here's the big question I get asked a lot. Can a security dog, which the application for that is as a personal protection dog, or a guard dog, do those other sports? And yep, the answer is, Scott's shaking his head, yep.
Sure can.
Because unlike the sport trained dogs who are taught a pattern, they're taught equipment, they're taught a routine, a guard dog is working off of just a command. And if you, the handler, know what you want the dog to do, all you got to do is tell him. But you can't take that Mondio ring dog and put him in a car lot at night and expect to have all your cars there in the morning.
But can they learn?
They can learn. Every one of them. Good point. Yes. Yes. That's why we're doing this seminar.
Yep.
To teach people how to teach their dogs how to figure it out. So October 14, 15, 16, we're going to do a little shake and howdy on Friday night. Or excuse me, on Thursday night. If y'all want to come in early, I'll have the names of the hotels that are dog friendly, and I'll put them up next week here and then on Facebook, and we'll also have the kennels here. We're going to kick out the paying customers for a little bit, so if you need to keep your dog here in the kennel, we'll have kennel space for them. We'll have equipment. We'll have dogs that'll bite. All we need is people that want to learn how to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have more. If you go to my Facebook page or the Western Shepherd Facebook page or Western Shepherd Family and Friends, we'll be posting all the stuff about that. And then, of course, next week we'll talk about it again. We may want to do a Black Bart special just to kind of show everybody what they could get. And remember, we're talking about dogs that aren't working for points.
They're working for you and the welfare of your family and your property. Your family more than anything else, and you, obviously.
Right. And you'll learn things, I believe, that you never dreamed of. So let's go to our trivia question. Ian White.
Ian White.
You had the Bulldog trivia question. I still haven't heard from you about an address. Send you a bumper sticker too. But here's the one we've been working on for 2 weeks. And Scott's give everybody hints.
The past 2 weeks I've done it.
Last 2 weeks. And you'll see where the hints come from here in just a little bit.
I'll change it up next week though. Maybe.
So this has been the most fun of all. This is a lot of the trivia questions I do. I've been doing trivia questions for entertainment people and books and such, for message boards for years. Mm-hmm. This is one I never wanted to do. I mean, I always wanted to do, but I never did because I wanted absolute backup, authenticity. Mm-hmm. So, question is, Old Yeller. The movie, the book, written by Frank Gibson. What do you got, Caroline? You got a question?
Oh, no. We're going to wait till the end.
Okay. Well, if you got questions, we can do them now.
Oh, okay.
Then we'll go to Old
There's
Yeller.
a question. Give me a moment. If a dog chooses flight, can the behavior be corrected?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And if anybody else has got any questions, type them in now. We'll answer them before we get to Old Yeller. Absolutely. That's what people don't realize. That's what people don't realize. I'm next, Carol Ann. Okay. Fight or flight is simple. It's the first choice. It's the dog's choice. The people, I know there's somebody that made a comment on one of these deals about my dog doesn't need training because it's his natural genetics. No, his natural genetics are to survive a fight. And you can get the baddest Cane Corso on the planet. You can get the fastest, quickest Malinois that's ever been seen. But until they're put in a stressful situation, nature don't give a damn about who's the hero and who wins the fight. Nature only rewards the ones that survive. And nature gives you two choices for survival. Fight or flight. And you get to decide, or the dog gets to decide in the stressful situation, which seems the most survivable. So that's why we train. What we do is we teach the dog to choose fight over flight.
So, okay, let me elaborate on fight or flight.
Please.
Basically, fight or flight is actually, Mr. Cole used to do this. You get the agitator and the trainer out there to a dog's house or a place. The dog doesn't know you're there. Understandably that, you can actually do the whip and all that, but it's a test of the dog to show that what the dog's going to do. So basically, dog's in his backyard or wherever it's at, and you jump the fence. Dog comes out, and you come out going after it. And he sees you. Is he going to stay or fight? Because back then, like you're saying, it's for the breeding purposes and all that, but also a dark shadow in the corner of the back of your yard coming at you. What are you going to do? Are you going to get it, or are you going to run?
Right.
So it's a primary test to see. And back then, the dogs that would choose flight over fight, they're out. But after knowing that, their techniques, training patterns, you can go ahead and build that dog up to where you do it again in 6 months after he's had training or whatever the dog's progression is, and he ain't gonna run.
Yeah.
You can, because back then they wouldn't teach that to a dog. They would see, okay, he's a fighter, he can come. He's a shepherd. You can't come. You're scared. You don't have it in you. They all have it in them.
Yep.
You just got to pull it out of some dogs, and some dogs you don't.
That's right.
Yep.
So I hope that answers it, and you can sure join us on October 14, 15, 16 to see it in action. You got any other questions, Carol Ann?
No, sir.
All righty, let's get back to our trivia question. Question was, the book Old Yeller, the greatest dog story ever written, I believe. Well, second greatest. No, stories is the greatest, yeah.
Balto was the best.
Well, we'll argue about that. The ending is real simple. Here's a summary. Old Yeller, stray dog, pulls up on the frontier. This family adopts him, takes him in. They takes him in because back then they didn't have rescues, so you took him in. Okay. And the dog, like all dogs had to do back then in the West, in Australia or wherever, had to work for his living. And the oldest boy, just really got attached to the dog, so they keep him, and Paul keeps him around. Got some littler kids, and Paul has to go off to a job somewhere, and the eldest boy, they're out doing. Oh no, I think his little sister, little brother, one was off somewhere, and a rabid wolf came up. It was not a rabbit. Yeah, it was a rabbit. A rabid wolf came up and was threatening the family. And Old Yeller jumps in there and saves the day and runs him off. But of course, then they realized a few weeks later, Old Yeller had rabies.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you the end of it because it makes me cry. so I won't. But you can guess the picture. And somebody had to take a little rifle, and it was really one of the worst days of my life. But anyway, where did Frank Gibson get this story?
Huh.
What do you think, Scott?
I don't know.
So, so
I'm just gonna sit here and listen to this.
okay, so Mr. Gibson wrote the book in the early 50s, 54, 55, somewhere around in there, 56. And there were stories that he grew up with from his grandparents and his parents. And at that time, Hollywood was doing the cowboy movies, and television was new, and cowboys were the thing. And all these stories that were basically a fact of things that had happened in real life to frontiersmen were romanticized and shown on TV. But there were also a whole lot of people who'd been around long enough to sort of have been right on the end of that era. And they had all these stories about all these Western heroes. And Mr. Gibson grew up listening to these stories. Now, a lot of you answered with Rattler. That was his grandparents' dog. I don't know where that belief came from, other than he just said, well, Rattler was like Old Yeller because he was real loyal to my grandparents. The things that Old Yeller went through were actually a compilation of several mini stories that Gibson had heard about dogs on the frontier. Stories that were repeated by his grandparents. And the most famous of all the frontiersmen at that time, we're talking the 1920s to 40s, was a man who died in 1907, somewhere around there, that you've all heard of, even today, when they're not as popular. Who was he, Scott?
Well, yeah, traveling circus.
Had a traveling circus. Scott.
Yeah, he had some lady with him called Annie Oakley.
Had Annie Oakley, ran around with him. Yep. Scott dropped a little hint, dropped his name and his everything the other day.
And I had the name last week and the prefix this week.
Oh, that's right.
So everybody got billed right last week, and this week everybody got buffaloed. So there's the answer.
Buffalo Bill Cody.
Yes, sir.
So now, his dog and the breed and the actual event that Mr. Gibson used to end Old Yeller, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Cody, I can't remember if I think it was Kansas at the time, and he actually, Buffalo Bill Cody, you want to talk about, that was back when men was really real men. At 14, he killed his first Indian, who was sneaking up on him at night, fixing to shoot one of his buddies in a campfire down below him. But he had signed up. His father had died young. They had a farm out there, I think it was Kansas, and he was signed up to go work on the pony with the Pony Express. So he was away from home, but his father had owned a Great Dane, and then he got another Great Dane. And at this time, Buffalo Bill Cody had a black Dane named Turk. And Turk was who Cody relied upon, because when he was go off on these wagon train deals, at 14 years old, he had two little sisters and his mother. And Turk was the family protector. And like a lot of cowboys do today, and a lot of the boys in Australia I've dealt with do today, their dogs worked, and their dogs understood them when they talked, and they knew what their responsibilities were. At one point, Cody was up to something, but his two little sisters, one was, if I remember right, one was around 12 years old, and the other one was about a 6-year-old. And they'd gone out in the spring and started picking berries. Now remember Old Yeller's story. Dad is gone. Old Yeller's the family protector. Wolf comes up attacks. Old Yeller fights him off, but of course he's bitten several times and he gets rabies. So now we got Cody's two little sisters, and they're out picking wild berries with Turk when a mountain lion comes up and spots them. The mountain lion began stalking them. Turk, the little girls couldn't understand it. Turk, the Dane, literally began pushing the two little girls back to a dugout section like a hill or mountain, a cave-like area. And he pushed and pushed while this cat was stalking closer and closer. When he got the two little girls into the hole, the cave in the side of the mountain, he turned and the mountain lion was right there and he faced off. Now we know a dog, even a Dane, is not much of a match for a mountain lion.
That's a big cat.
Big cat.
Yeah.
But Turk took him on and got knocked 20 feet away. The lion was now distracted from the two little girls and went to finish off Turk, pounced on him. The dog managed, and all this was written by Cody's oldest, the oldest of the two girls, wrote a book about the life of Bill Cody. That's where this information comes from, and she narrates this exact scene and how it happened. The mountain lion went to pounce on Turk again, and Turk was able to grab the cat and hold him at bay. They stayed in the little cave, sure they were going to die. And then the cat swung around and threw Turk over his shoulder and landed him 15 or 20 feet away. He was bleeding, he was weak, but he stood up and ran to the mouth of the cave and stood there as the mountain lion began to stalk towards him. Then they heard the rifle shot, and the cat dropped dead. Bill Cody had wondered where his sisters were, or his little sisters were, and Turk, and why they hadn't come back. So he had stepped out and took his rifle with him, as he always did, and had heard the screaming and the fight. He heard the cat scream, he heard Turk barking, and he got there just in time to save everyone's life. And he was a dead shot, and that was Turk's salvation.
You ever hear a mountain lion scream?
Yeah, oh.
Good, you hear it 10 miles away.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, that's the story. That's what happened to Buffalo Bill and his little sisters with his dog Turk.
This is a Great Dane.
But remember, it was a Great Dane, black Great Dane. And remember, though, in Old Yeller, it was a wolf, and the wolf turned out to be Rabbit, and Yeller had to be shot, which was the hardest part of the movie for everybody. And so, what happened to Turk was about a month after this incident with the lion. He was still recovering because he was pretty well beat up, according to the sister's book. A person on another spread, a rabid dog, came onto their place, and Turk again stepped up to stop the threat to his family, and was bitten, and just like in Old Yeller, contracted rabies. They, again, just like Gibson ended the Old Yeller story, they knew it was coming. They tied him out, so if he did go crazy, he couldn't hurt anybody, but praying that somehow through a miracle he might survive. 8 days later, he began to show all the signs of rabies. And Buffalo Bill, who would go on to slaughter hundreds and hundreds of buffaloes and more than 2 or 3 men, called down to the local town there and said I got this situation. I can't do it. So he paid a townsman to come in, and he said, bring your own gun, for you will not use mine. The exact same ending as Old Yeller. So that's the trivia answer for anyone who's interested. It's a tough story. It's like the Old Yeller story, but it was really sad story for Old Yeller.
Those vets back then didn't have no.
No,
Nothing.
no. They still don't.
Yeah,
Once you get rabies, you get rabies.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. We got vaccinations for humans, but
I got a joke, but I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it. That's an extra big question.
so
But yeah, that was. Y'all listen a little better sometimes.
so the answer is the dog's name was Turk. The breed was a Great Dane, and the owner is Buffalo Bill Cody, the greatest frontiersman America's, and Wild Bill Hickok, who Scott also mentioned 2 weeks ago. Turns out him and Cody were best friends. So,
You never know.
yep. And if you go to Cody, Wyoming, and there's where he lived actually in Kansas, where this incident happened. Bill Cody had a headstone made for Turk, and I can't remember the poem. If anyone's interested, I'll be glad to find it and send you a copy. Wrote a eulogy to his dog, and that headstone's still there today. And he took his Wild West show all the way to Europe. He made cowboys famous all around the world, and for the rest of his life, he always owned a black Great Dane. So there's our story. What do you think, Scott?
I appreciate y'all for listening and signing in. Hope you enjoyed it and a little information. And you know what they always say though, it's all about the dogs.
Yep.
See y'all next week.
See you then, folks.